Welcome to Vive Marketing. As experts in marketing for manufacturers, our goal is simple: take the stress out of marketing. As an approachable and dependable partner, Vive works as an extension of our clients' team to promote what makes their brand different, helping them to reach new target audiences while reconnecting with their existing customers. For 13 years, Vive has helped companies unlock their true potential by creating customized marketing strategies that effectively share their story. This approach is followed by creating critical sales tools to help increase brand awareness and new business opportunities. With a sole focus on the plastics and metals industries, manufacturers and manufacturing service providers trust Vive because we understand manufacturing and the vernacular. Our vibrant team is collaborative, delivering a deep set of skills. We take pride in our established reputation and are committed to helping your business advance too. Is it time for Vive? Visit us at marketingformanufacturers.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the final day of Women Breaking the Mold Conference. I'm Teresa Schell, President and owner of Vive Marketing, located in the vibrant 3rd Ward District in Milwaukee. Vive is a leading marketing agency in the plastics industry, providing marketing services exclusively for manufacturers and service providers. For 13 years, we have focused on advancing brands, business goals, and the bottom line through strategic, tailored, and purposeful marketing for manufacturers. Our personal attention to each client quickly results in Vive becoming an extension of your team, and we have fun while on the journey. We take pride in our established reputation and are committed to helping your business advance too. Vive is supporting this year's WMB conference by welcoming our 3rd keynote workshop speaker. Among other achievements, today's distinct female leader is a CVA, Certified in Volunteer Administration, perhaps something you may have interest in yourself. As a 2017 Women Breaking the Mold alumni, each morning I've shared an attribute that has been significant in my leadership, including surrounding myself with people smarter than me, getting comfortable with grit, and today a 3rd attribute: be humble. Without humility, it's difficult for any leader to acknowledge their mistakes or learn from an experience or even consider another person's perspective. Stay humble, my friends. Thank you for devoting your time during this busy week, surrounded by like-minded professionals while attending Women Breaking the Mold. Now let's keep learning. Today's career development workshop, moderated by Rhoda Meal, is led by Reid, President of Kaber Communications, as she highlights tips on building your network and guide to a mentorship. At this point, I will hand things over to Rhoda.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rhoda Meal, Assistant Managing Editor of Plastics News. And I apologize because for some reason at this very moment, they are on my roof cleaning off the gutters. So I apologize if there's noise in the background. I think we're all accustomed to that. But welcome to the 2020 Women Breaking the Mold Networking Forum, organized by Plastics News. Today, as Teresa mentioned, we will kick off our final day of the forum with this interactive workshop focused on career development. Our speaker for this workshop is Reid, President and founder of Kaber Communications. Karen will be offering tips on boosting your professional network, how to be a mentor, and how to foster teamwork and collaboration. Now, before Karen begins, I want to mention 2 interactive aspects that we hope will aid your experience. Now, first, Karen will be asking you to participate in some polling throughout the course of the workshop. To participate, open the second tab in your internet browser, go to menti.com and enter this code, 8179625. Now, the website and code number should be showing up on the screen right now. And now Karen will be answering your questions after her presentation as well. So to submit a question, email pnevents@crane.com, or if you're watching via LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you can submit a question through those platforms. And with that, I'll hand things over to Reid. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rhoda, and good morning. And good morning to everyone. All of you, thank you so much for joining us today. We have so much information to talk about that I would like to just jump right in and get started. So next slide, please. We're going to kick this off with one of our polls. This one is a word cloud, and here's how it works. If you can go to menti.com and type in the poll code. Our poll code again is 8179625. 5 and answer this question in one word. Tell us what you see as the biggest obstacle to your success. Again, remember, we only have one word because this is a word cloud, and we want everybody to have a chance to get their words onto our cloud. While we're doing that, I would like to take a moment and just give a quick disclaimer. I'm not an expert in science and technology. That's where you all shine. My job here today is to offer ways to help you boost your visibility to management while accelerating forward momentum. So really what we're going to do today is we're looking at form rather than function. And I will say that if you don't have a lot of experience in the field, I still think you'll be getting something out of today's workshop. You really need to demonstrate your abilities and or lead from within the team to build your solid foundation as you move forward. When you have the respect of your teammates, your colleagues, and your leadership, those doors open so much easier. Wow, look at this word cloud. Oh, this is so wonderful. Look at these great words: confidence, time, experience, priorities. Lots of wonderful words that are, showing us what some of the challenges that we face. And time, time is a big one, right? We're all always short on time. Self-confidence, introvert, little experience, technical expertise, lots of things that I can see that we want to cover a lot today. So let's go ahead and move right into our material, and we'll cover as much as we possibly can. So yesterday, we talked about communication as a critical tool for cultivating and maintaining an engaged workforce. But communication is really critical to each one of us. We need to develop and strengthen the relationships that are important, and communication helps us do this. So ideally, you should be communicating, actually regularly, you should be communicating with all of your stakeholders. And that means all the way up the chain, not just your colleagues. Because in addition to your colleagues, your boss, your leadership, they all need to know about the great things that you and your people are doing. Today, we're going to talk about how you can confidently leverage communication and position yourself as a sought-after collaborator, while at the same time, professionally and successfully promoting the worth of your people and your team. To do this, we're going to, we'll talk about the framework of a team, but we'll focus in on the individual, and that's you. Next slide, please. So where do we begin? Well, best practices in communication always lead us back to starting with the audience. And in this case, our audiences are our stakeholders. And we want to think about who our stakeholders are, what our stakeholders need, what kind of information do they need to know? What do they know already? What should they know? Or what else do we want to share with them? Ideally, what we want to do is we want to let our stakeholders know, number one, what we bring to the table, number two, what our teams bring to the table, and how we can support strategic initiatives. And we're also always looking for opportunities for collaboration. Next slide, please. Thank you. So your colleagues, your boss, your leadership, what do they all have in common? Well, first and foremost, they're people, just like you, just like me. We're all people. And because we're all people, we're all dealing right now with a lot of disruption in our lives. COVID-19 has caused so many disruptions on so many levels that it's affecting us personally as well as professionally. We're dealing with issues like childcare, like schooling, elder care, right? Health issues and concerns. We've got social distancing. And in addition to COVID-19, we also have the other larger issues that are happening in the bigger picture of our world, such as, social unrest and the political turmoil that's happening, even the changing weather patterns. So much is going on out there, and it tends to come in and affect us in here. And not only does it affect us, it affects our leaders as well. Yesterday, I touched on the humanity factor, and that is remembering that everyone we work with, ultimately, we're all people. And because of that, we need to remember that as we move forward. And we need to also remember that Communication is going to help us get through this and move through it. So let's talk about leadership for a minute. You know, your leaders kind of zoom out and they take that big picture perspective. They're looking at things from a very strategic vantage point and, you know, where the company was, where the company is, and where the organization is going. They may not be involved in the day-to-day and the tactical of getting the job done as we are. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. But we need to always remember to be thinking about that bigger perspective as well. Please change the slide. Thank you. And to do this, we ask ourselves a few questions. Number one, what's happening in the organization? What are the pain points? What value can I personally bring? And what can my team bring? What can we do to help things move forward and move along? Next slide, please. To do this, we need to be thinking like our leaders and we need to speak like our leaders. So what is the language of leadership? If you think about it, strong leaders lead with their actions, but they also lead with their words. And, you know, strong leaders recognize their people. They acknowledge the good work that their teams are doing. Strong leaders speak in terms of what I call the colloquial we. They use the word we, not I. Not I led my team to, you know, succeeding in the third quarter, but we achieved our third quarter results. We as a team, building unity, motivating, and inspiring. Strong leaders also are direct and to the point, recognizing that leaders don't have a lot of extra time on their plates. So when we go in and we speak with our leaders, we want to also be direct, concise, and to the point. At the same time, strong leaders also ask a lot of questions. And not only do they ask questions, but they expect that questions will be asked of them, and so they are prepared to answer. So lots of great things that our leaders do, and we can take a lot of lessons from this. Now, I know it may sound like a lot, but as you practice what I call leader speak, it gets easier as you move forward, and eventually it becomes second nature to you. Next slide, please. So we're not in the room yet, but we're on our way. And what we need to do now is we need to boost our visibility. And by that, I mean, you need to put your program or your people out there. And by doing so, you're ultimately, that's an extension of you. So you're putting yourself out there as well. In essence, we're talking about doing some PR for your people and your program. And I'd like to say that this is not a bad thing. Visibility is not bragging. Visibility is not aggressively selling. Visibility is simply acknowledging and putting out information about your people and your program, what you're doing. There are lots of ways that we can do this. So next slide, please. Thank you. And what we can do is I like to break it down into internal and external. Externally, how can you boost your presence and build your visibility? Well, externally, we have lots of ways. We have social media, right? LinkedIn. If you don't have a strong LinkedIn profile, that may be something you want to address. You don't have to spend a lot of time on social media, but anytime that you engage with social media, you're putting yourself out there and people take notice. Now, also externally, how else can you engage? Well, think about it. You can engage and get involved with your professional association or an industry association. You can sit on a committee. You can maybe, I don't know, let's say judge a competition, right? You can also present. You can present at a conference. You can go into the schools. You know, you all are in STEM. And one of the things that we really want to do is nurture and foster our younger generations. So go into the schools and educate them about STEM opportunities. Lots of ways that you can engage externally. As you do this, what you are doing is you are getting noticed because your actions are reflecting who you are, what you do, and your values. And these are things that leaders look for. So lots of great ways that you can take your show on the road and step out and get some visibility. Internally, what can you do? Well, first of all, raise your hand. You can ask to step onto a team or participate in a new project. You can reach out. You can support your colleagues. You can engage in all sorts of different activities in the workplace, right? Volunteering. We have corporate volunteering programs that are phenomenal. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. You can also become a mentor. It's, again, very important to nurture and foster not just the younger generation, but our colleagues as well. Mentorship is a great way to give back. And when you are a mentor, you are practicing and building your leadership skills. So lots of great things you can do to really boost your visibility. Next slide, please. At the same time, we want to make sure that our voices are being heard. And to do this, you need to speak up, right? And how can you do this? Well, how about giving a pitch? Maybe a pitch before a meeting or at the end of the meeting if there's time. Take a minute and share something exciting that's happening with your team, maybe a success story. You can also get some testimonials from people that you're working with, maybe your HR business partner or a supplier or a vendor that you're working with who would be willing to give a testimonial to how you and your team have, done some great work. These things can carry weight with our leaders and our bosses, and they can also help you to build out that network. And speaking of network, that's something that's very, very important. And we should always be building out our network. Everywhere I go, I work the room. Now I work the Zoom, but I'm always meeting and greeting and looking to meet some new people. Why? Because you never know who those people are going to turn out to be. You never know where those connections might lead you. And we always need to continue to grow and thrive. And this is how we do it. Next slide, please. Okay, so time for another poll. And this time, tell us what you're doing. How are you currently piping up? And I've got some suggestions here. Are you using informal conversations? Are you chatting with people? Regularly emailing people to keep them in the loop, right? Are we doing formal presentations, either inside or outside? Are you publishing your work? Are you blogging are you posting, or are you doing something else? Let us know. Our poll code is 8179625. And we are so lucky we have the same poll code throughout our session today. So that makes it easier and helps us. How are we doing with our poll? Okay, the numbers just popped up. Okay, this is great. Okay, so I don't see a lot of blogging and posting. That's fine. Some of us are doing formal presentations. The majority of us are having those informal conversations, which is fantastic. And it's a little bit more challenging to do because so many of us are remote or we're on hybrid teams. It takes a little bit more effort. We don't have the ability to just kind of knock on the door and say, hey, got a second for a chat. We have to arrange it. But at the same time, those conversations are so important. And so I am thrilled to see that so many of you are doing that. Okay, I think we should wrap up the poll. So next slide, please. What we're going to do now is take a little break and have a chance for you to ask some questions. So I'm going to turn it back to Rhoda, and she's going to facilitate that for us. Rhoda?
Okay. To start with, one of the big things we saw on that word cloud was that time is an issue. And, obviously that's a lot of things with homeschooling has fallen onto the women in the family. Some people have been lucky enough to have pods, but, obviously we're talking about time, not only for ourselves, but also to our supervisors within the chain of command who are, they may not have kids in school, but they probably are getting more demands on their time as well. So do you try to schedule time, which feels kind of like scheduling a play date, I guess. It seems kind of odd. I mean, how do you go about finding time? And is it a matter of chunks of time or even small segments?
Well, I think, Rhoda, that's a great question. We're talking about two sort of different subsets here. We're talking about supervisors and perhaps finding time to have conversations with employees. A great thing to do is to set some office hours. You know, maybe on Tuesday mornings from 9 to 11, I am available. If you have anything you want to discuss, you can just pop in. I'll be on Zoom, or you can set up an appointment with me if you want to have a private conversation during that time or during any other time. I think opening the door and being available, and yet at the same time setting some boundaries and saying, look, 8:30 at night is not the best time for me because I may be putting my children to bed. So these are my availability times. I think regardless of whether you're a supervisor or an employee, the same thing applies. As employees, we always want to be there. We want to be available for our managers, and we want to, be on our teams. I think our leadership is recognizing as we move through this process of COVID-19 that they're recognizing that, as we are people and we have all these other things pulling at us, that we need to be a little bit more flexible. And so it's totally okay if you need some time to ask for it. At the same time, you still need to get your work done. And so you want to demonstrate to your boss that you can get your work done. And maybe it's flex time. Maybe I need to not be online during certain hours because my child needs the computer or, has to attend school and I need to support my child, but I will get my work done by the end of the day, or I will have it to you first thing in the morning. Maybe you're an evening person and you work better late at night. So it's time management and doing what works for you within the bigger construction of your job and also your organizational needs.
Yeah, and I guess sort of to follow up on that, you're dealing with, you mentioned these other opportunities to enhance your profile, and that may be volunteering, getting involved with STEM, sure. Getting involved with different things like that. But again, that sort of falls back to that time issue. So it feels like there's a lot of organizational work that goes into it. And I know a lot of women out there, especially if they're coming from a STEM background, know how to organize, in terms of their research or something like that. Is it a matter of sort of applying those skills to different things to say, okay, my advancement is as much of an important skill as my research, and it's time to put some of that emphasis onto my visibility as well?
Yeah, so really what we're talking about is prioritization, right? And you're absolutely correct. You need to prioritize yourself and your career in addition to your job. Okay, you said your research, in addition to your job. And we need to carve out some time to do this because we need to take ownership. We need to be the ones to move our career forward. We can't sit back and expect that someone else is going to do this for us. They won't. We can have sponsors, we can have mentors, and they can help us through this process. But ultimately, we have to do the work. And we have to be comfortable with the level, with the pace that we're moving, and also with the level of work that we are putting in to, obviously our professional work, as well as into boosting our careers. So again, as I'm saying, you don't have to put a huge chunk of time into this to make some strides. If you start engaging on different levels with some of the opportunities that we've mentioned and some other ones, that you have available to you, every little bit helps. Publish your work. If you are doing research, you ideally are publishing. When you publish your work, promote it a little bit. Let people know, hey, I'm published. Hey, I got another patent, whatever it is. Share that information with people. It doesn't take long to do that. And that's a great way to also help boost your presence and your credibility.
Okay. It's sort of, that's a way you can use social media, which doesn't take that much time necessarily, but you can, make certain that your profile is out there on some level.
Yes, definitely. Social media is a conversation with the community, right? So you can drop something out there, you can put out a tweet, you can do a post, At the same time, if you monitor it, you'll get, you'll get responses, you'll get likes, you'll get shares, you may have comments back. And so you can go down that rabbit hole of putting a ton of time into social media, but you don't have to. So I suggest starting small. If, for example, with LinkedIn, make a LinkedIn post, set yourself a goal of even one a week. That's a great start, and see how it goes, see how that fits into your schedule, right? Again, we're just boosting our visibility. And so you can take tiny steps to do that. If you find that you've got more pockets of time, you can increase that. If you don't, a minimum is fine. As I said, anything that you can do is a good thing.
Okay, I'll let you, I know we have more to cover, so let you go ahead onto our next subject area.
Okay, great. Thank you. Teaming. Okay, so we're talking about teaming, and ultimately teaming leads us into collaboration. Teaming leads us into a lot of interesting things. So next slide, please. Okay, yesterday I talked about culture, and I'd like to toss it back to you and have you tell us, again in one word for a word cloud, one attribute of a successful team. How would you describe a successful team? And I'm really curious to see what you all come up with. Again, our poll code is 8179625. And as we are waiting for those, and at menti.com, as we are waiting for our word cloud to pop up, let's talk just a little bit about teams. Teams are comprised of people. People need communication. So we need to be sure that we are actively, look at your words here, right? Listening, that we're collaborative, that we are being accountable. We need to individually be accountable, as well as our team needs to be accountable for the goals of, of our project. Look at this, fantastic words, trust. Trust is huge on a team. Respect, openness. I love these words. These are fantastic. Oh my gosh, and they are just flooding in. Unified, right? We want our team to be able to move forward together as a unit. Absolutely. These are fantastic words. I am just loving this. I could let this go on all day, but we do need to move into some other materials. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. And maybe someone can grab a screenshot of this because this is great. Next slide, please. So when you join a team, it's all about knowing where you fit in, right? When you come onto a team, or as a team leader, if you are bringing somebody onto your team, you want to make sure that you are finding the right role for this person. And basically, we're trying to find the right fit. So team leaders, you want to look at this person and maximize their abilities and capabilities. As a team member, when you come onto a team, you want to figure out the lay of the land, how everybody communicates, how things run, and how you can best support your team members. Next slide, please. So this is where we get into collaboration. And, being part of a team, there are a lot of levels to being part of a team. And I like to think of it this way. I use the rowing metaphor. So think about a boat. When someone is rowing in a race, right? There are 8 people who sit in that boat, and the boat is steered and also led by the coxswain. The coxswain is the only person in the boat who actually gives direction. Everyone else does their job and they are rowing. Coxswain is also the only person who faces forward in the boat. The rowers face backwards. So they are rowing and pulling the boat as they move backwards. Now, each one of these rowers is an individually accomplished athlete. They have a lot of accolades. They may have won a lot of awards and a lot of recognition. They have a lot of confidence and sometimes big egos to go along with that. But you know what? They leave all that on the shore and they get into the boat. They know that in order to achieve their goal, they have to work as one smooth unit. They have to all pull together at the same time. The paddles on their oars have to dip into the water and come out at the same time so that the boat moves smoothly through the water. And they also know that if one of their teammates is not able to pull quite as hard as she needs to, the rest of them pull just a little bit harder so they can keep that forward momentum going. They have to trust each other and respect each other. And as they do this and they work together as one unit, they reach their ultimate goal, which in this case is winning the race. It's the same thing on a team, right? We have a set of individuals. Everyone's unique. Everyone brings something else to the table, something fantastic, something special. And yet we all are working towards a common goal. And we need to be focused on those goals. And so, when you come onto a team, it's very important to understand how the team operates and also to know what you bring to the table. You may be on a cross-functional team, and perhaps you're on that team because you bring certain abilities to the table that can really help drive that team forward. Not only do you want to be known for being the superlative person that you are, and in my case, communicator, right? But you also want people to know that you can collaborate, that you support the team. And how do they know this? Because we communicate this and we show it. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we are doing all this and integrating ourselves into our teams, sometimes we find that we need some guidance. So here's our next poll. Who do you go to for advice? And we've got some choices here: a mentor or sponsor, your boss, internal colleague, a professional colleague who is someone outside of your organization but in your field, or friends and family. Again, our poll code is 8179625, and please let us know what you are doing. Okay, the results just popped up. Okay, look at this. The majority, interesting. Some of us are going to our boss or professional colleagues. The majority are going to informal colleagues. I don't see anyone going to mentors or sponsors or family and friends. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So next slide, please. Let's move on. And let's talk about mentors and sponsors. Mentors and sponsors, and I realize we had a panel discussion on this yesterday, so we're not going to dive too deeply into it, but basically we have mentors and we have sponsors. Mentors are there to guide you and support, okay? And a sponsor pretty much advocates and champions you to help you get up the ranks. Now, a mentor can be a sponsor, and a sponsor could be a mentor, so there's some definite overlap there. But mentoring is so important to us in our careers on so many levels. I have had mentors my entire career, from my very first day on the job all the way until now. Many of my mentors I'm still in touch with, and I go to them. I go to them for guidance. In fact, my very first mentor, she's now retired, but she's still my mentor, and we have a lovely working relationship, and she's actually become a dear friend. Mentors are wonderful people to have in our lives. They can not only give us support, but they can help guide us when we're making decisions. And, when we hit some of those stumbling blocks, they can help us step back and take another perspective. Next slide, please. So how do you find your mentor? Well, to find your mentor match, use what I call the 3 R's. First of all, research. Look around. See who you would like to be your mentor. Find somebody that you admire. Find someone that you respect. You respect their values. You respect the way that they work and move through the professional world. And then reach out. Ask them. And I wouldn't suggest just walking up and saying, hey, do you want to be my mentor? But start small. Start by asking to have a conversation and to learn a little bit more about them, what they do, and how they got to this point in their careers. It can be very enlightening to have these conversations. And as you're gathering this information and you have these conversations, you will find that you and your mentor will click. And at that point, you can establish a mentor-mentee relationship. And ideally, you want to set some guidelines for this. So maybe you have regular meetings or check-ins or maybe there are certain things that you are working on that you want to come to your mentor for assistance with, whatever it is between the two of you, and each mentor-mentee relationship will be unique. At the same time, the third R that we need to be thinking about is reciprocation. Not only should you have a mentor, but ultimately you should become a mentor. And this is sort of a 360-degree relationship between a mentor and a mentee. So, for example, you have your mentors in your life, and as you start moving forward through your career, or maybe you're more seasoned, then we need to think about mentoring others, mentoring our younger colleagues or people who are thinking about entering into, say, the STEM fields, right? Take it out to the schools. How about down to the middle schools and the high schools, explaining to girls the opportunities available to them in STEM, and finding someone who's really interested and mentoring them. Let them shadow you for a day. Let them see what life is like as a professional in your field. This is a great way for someone who is looking to enter the field to really understand what it's all about and to see the opportunities that are there. How about college students? We have students who are studying and want to become members of this field. They're very directed. They need some guidance. So engage with the schools. See if you can reach out to, perhaps the school has a chapter of your professional association or your industry association, and engage that way. Or maybe go in and give a guest lecture. Lots of ways that you can find your mentee. Now, it's a beautiful thing, and so important that we continue this process all throughout our careers and beyond. Not just our younger generations. We should be mentoring our colleagues as well. Sometimes we have colleagues who need some guidance, or someone who just joined a team who doesn't have a lot of experience with this. You can be a buddy, you can be a mentor for this person when they come onto your team. Lots of different ways that we can do this. Next slide, please. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about mentoring. I'm conscious of the time, and we do want to get a lot of Q&As in here and hear what you have to say. So I'm going to turn it over to Rhoda now. Rhoda, what kinds of questions have been coming in?
Well, one of the things that sort of came up was looking at the issue of teamwork and sort of following up on our previous discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Say that you've been really good at getting your name out there, you're comfortable with communicating, and you find yourself as sort of an informal leader within your team. How do you then make certain that other people in your team who may not be as vocal are still getting recognized for their work, and keeping that cohesive team at the same time, so that you're not standing out there like a sore thumb?
That's an awesome question, and a very real question. So thank you for that. So yes, two things are happening here. Number one, you are leading from within your team, right? You are bringing your work ethic to your team. You are showing your teammates that you can support them and that you are a strong member of this team. At the same time, it sounds like you are a driving force on this team, which is a good thing. That being said, we always need to be aware of that humanity factor. We are all people on this team. And because we're all people, we all have thoughts and opinions, but we also have feelings. And we need to be sensitive to the fact that some of our teammates may be introverted. They may not be as willing to step out into the light as some of the other members of the team. And so we want to bring them along. This is where we get into some of the things we talked about with leadership, where we use the we. We talk about the we. It's not so much an individual for what I am doing for this team. It's what we are all doing as a unit. And you may be managing a particular function on your team and doing stellar work. Keep everyone else in the loop. Let them know how it's going. Offer to liaise with them if they have some questions or they need some help in a certain area. I think there's lots of ways that you can be a strong leader from within without alienating your teammates and earning their respect along the way. Leading by example and working side by side with someone is one of the best ways to earn respect. I will tell you, as a team leader, I would never ask any of my people to do something that I either haven't done before or won't do next to them. I work side by side with my people to let them know that I value them and I value their contributions. We need to make sure we are letting our people know and letting our teammates know that we do value their contributions, unique and individual, as well as their team contributions. At the same time, a leader, if you are leading from the front, you obviously need to set the tone. You need to set the focus on the goals. But again, you need to keep your people working together cohesively.
Okay, and so this is follow up a little bit from what from some points that we made earlier.
Mhm.
What can you do as a member of a team, as a leader? Your stakeholders may be sending out a message that's contradictory or it's not clear. I mean, what can you do to approach that? You know, you don't want to upset the boss, but you need your team to be clear on what they're doing. So what do you do? You know, what can you do in terms of, you know, going forward and saying, you know, we need to clear out this misunderstanding or this confusion?
Mhm. So what I would do first is take the pulse of your team and figure out where those little sticking points are, where the confusion is. And then I would ask for a sit down, a one-on-one with my boss. And, you know, when you sit down with your boss, just have this conversation, say, look, we've got confusion on my team. Our messages don't seem to be aligning with yours. So can we talk through this? And can you please clue me in as to what's happening and why your messaging is going down this path, because I would like mine to align with yours so that our team is on the same page with you. Your boss should be probably more than willing to say, yes, this is the direction. Maybe we've had to shift. Maybe I wasn't clear and you didn't understand, you being the person who's having this conversation, maybe the boss has not been as clear as he or she should have been. And so we misunderstood, right? Maybe something came down from above and suddenly we have a shift that we need to follow. And so we need to do that. Ideally, your boss should be communicating this to you all along the way so that you can in turn communicate this to your team and make sure that everyone is staying aligned. When those messages get mixed like this, it breeds confusion, but it can also breed distrust. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I say, get on top of it as quickly as you can and start with your boss and just try and get that dialogue going. Keep that door open regularly. If you're not doing this, you should be meeting with your boss to discuss your team. Let them know how things are going, what you are doing, obviously progress towards the goal, but also finding out at the same time what's happening in the bigger world of your organization and are your messaging still aligned?
Okay, so it sort of goes back to the message of, you know, your boss is still human, and maybe
Yes.
there was confusion, maybe there's change further up. Like you said, I'll let you move on to the next subject so we can keep moving forward then.
Okay, one thing I would like to say before we do that is, to your point that your boss
Mhm.
is human just like you are, we all make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to acknowledge that mistake. And everyone all up and down the chain should feel comfortable doing that. Okay, let's go back to our slides. Thank you. Okay, so this is our last section. And, you know, getting into the game, getting noticed, right? Anyone can look at Serena's game plan, right? Anyone can bake a cake if you follow a recipe. Anyone could probably tell you the laws of physics, but they might not be able to really grasp it and understand it. In order to truly move forward in your career, you need to take the reins and you need to make it happen. You need to get noticed. We can't just take take someone else's plan or someone else's vision and impart that to us. It has to be individual to us. Where do you want to go in your career? How do you want to expand on your professional development, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Maybe it's short term. Where do you see yourself in 1 year? We need to be thinking about this as we go forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you. Remember, our poll code is 8179625, and your question is, you have been asked to pitch a program to your senior leadership. On a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel? Are you very confident, as in, I've got this, no problem, I can ace it? Or on the other end of the spectrum, are you so terrified that you feel like you're going to throw up and you just don't know if you can do this? So clock in your answers and let us know how you're feeling about this. This is fantastic. Okay, so the majority of you are fairly confident, somewhat confident, right? And confident. We don't have anyone up. Here we go. The numbers are changing. We do have some people who are not feeling confident. That's okay. I'm actually not surprised to see that we are all over the spectrum on this, because each one of us is in a different place and each one of us has different attributes. And so, for those of us who are not confident, don't worry, because we're going to break it down. I love, though, that we have diversity amongst our group in how we are feeling about this. Okay, looks like our numbers are fairly stable, so let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So we're in the meeting, right? We've been invited to present to senior leadership team. So when you're in the meeting, what do? Well, the first thing you should do is read the room. And by that, I mean literally look around. Look around the room. If you're in a physical space, you can do this. If you're on Zoom or Teams, look at the people who are on screen with you. Take note of what they're wearing, right? There's nothing worse than coming to meetings all suited up if everyone else is business casual. We want to make sure that we are fitting in with the culture of this particular team and or meeting. Pay attention to what they're saying. Think about it. When you enter the room, what's happening? Are people getting there early and having chit chat? Are people coming in right on time on the button and just getting down to work? Both are great ways to start a meeting. Different. You need to figure out which one it is so that you feel comfortable moving in this space. At the same time, when you're there, you want to engage. You were asked to this meeting for a reason. So when you have conversations, when there are brainstorming, when questions are asked, put up your hand and pipe up. Pitch into the conversation. They want to know what you have to say, so let them hear it. At the same time, when you're in these meetings, again, going back to being a leader and demonstrating those leadership qualities, when you talk about your team, what do leaders do? They acknowledge their people. They recognize the great work that their teams are doing. So share some of those success stories about your team. Obviously, bring your metrics with you so you can support the information that you're sharing, but use those leadership qualities. When you present, keep it to the point, not brusque, but concise. And, ask questions. Don't be hesitant to ask questions in a meeting. Chances if you have a question, someone else has the same question. They just may be hesitant to ask. I'm a big believer in information gathering, and I think that's how we grow, that's how we learn, and that's how we move forward quicker by doing that. Lastly, we want to make sure that we are actively listening. And by that, I mean paying attention and literally listening very carefully to what is being said verbally as well as non-verbally. Next slide, please. Listening is one of the most underused skills. And it's very interesting because this is, for leadership, one of the most sought after skills and the most desirable and the most needed. Blanchard Companies, in their 2020 Talent and Leadership Development Survey, they interviewed or surveyed 800 people who were talent and development leaders. And they found that 82% of these 800 respondents listed listening as the most desirable quality that they sought after in their leaders. 82% are looking for listening. So what does that mean? Well, yesterday we talked about listening non-verbally, right? Body language. Remember, I went like this and I said, what happens if I'm looking at you like this as you are talking to me? You might feel that I'm not interested. You might feel that I don't like what you have to say. You might even go so far as to say to yourself, Karen doesn't like me, which is not the case. If I am listening to you and my body language is more open, I'm smiling, I'm nodding, I'm focusing on you, I'm looking at you, and my arms are open, this is indicating to you that I am interested, that I am engaged, and I am absorbing your information. Both types of body language don't necessarily mean that someone is listening or isn't, but they give off very different impressions. So we want to be sure that we are coming across as active listening. At the same time, emotions can come into play when we listen. And this is very important because when someone is sharing something with you, especially if they are giving you feedback, you can get defensive. You may have certain feelings about certain issues. We need to check our emotions at the door. We need to listen to the complete messages that are being put out there in our conversations. And then once we've done that, then we can decide how we feel about it. This is a much more practical, but a much stronger way of listening. When we don't do that and we let our emotions get in the way, then conversations can become heated, they can become confrontational or unproductive, none of which is a good thing. So lots of things that we can do as we listen. And at the same time, not just listening to what's being said in the room, we need to constantly be doing the bigger picture and listening on a bigger picture level. So we've already talked about what's happening in the wider world. Let's be aware of that. Let's bring that back in to the business with us in our perceptions. Let's hear what's happening outside and let's see how that might be affecting our team, how it might be affecting our people, how it might be affecting our organization, how it might be affecting our work. And that's really going to help you go a long way. Next slide, please. This is feedback, and I touched on it just a minute ago, and I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper. With feedback, the first thing to know about feedback is not a criticism. Feedback is a critique, and there's a big difference between the two. And this is where the emotions come into play that I was mentioning. When someone gives you feedback, we need to make sure that we are open and willing to receive that. Basically, ready, willing, and able to receive that feedback. At the same time, we want to make sure that we let the person who's giving us the feedback know that we are getting it. You can ask for feedback, and when you do, you want to think about who you can ask, right? Do you ask your mentor for feedback? Do you ask your boss for feedback? Colleagues for feedback? I mean, you can even do 360-degree feedback where the people who work for you provide feedback. That takes a little bit of time, but it's a very, very useful process. At the same time, anytime you ask for feedback, we want to be sure that we are letting this person know, yes, I want your feedback and I will use it, because there's nothing worse than giving feedback and having it go nowhere. When you do that, the person that has given you the feedback, who has taken their time to give you the feedback, probably won't do it again. Why? Because they will feel that, number one, their time has been wasted. Number two, you don't value their opinion and their information. And that's not a good thing. So we want to be sure that we are open to feedback, because feedback is so useful. When people give us feedback, these are our teachable moments. This is how we learn. This is how we grow. This is how we move forward. When I first started presenting on Zoom, I asked someone for feedback, and I said, how did I do? And she said, oh, your presentation was great, but you know what? You moved around a lot. And because you did that, it looked like you were bouncing on the camera. Okay, lesson learned. Thank you very much. And I now stand in one place. I still gesture and use my arms, but I don't move around the room. Feedback is so important on so many levels. Next slide, please. Some people are not comfortable getting feedback, and they're very, very uncomfortable with accepting their achievements. This is called the imposter syndrome. Originally, it was tagged as the imposter phenomenon, and it was discovered in the late 1970s, I believe it was 1978, by Suzanne Imes and Pauline Rose Clance. And they found that high achievers, they were studying female graduate students, these high achievers were uncomfortable with their success. Now, the American Psychological Association has found that people who suffer from this often attribute their success to luck, and often they describe feeling like a fraud, and they're afraid that someone is going to unmask them. I will tell you that I have seen the imposter syndrome. I've worked with people who struggle with it across the board, across generations, across genders, across levels of seasoning within the organization. You know, this is a real thing and it does affect people. That being said, there is good news, and that is that it can be overcome. How do we overcome this? Well, step back. Take a look at your achievements. Pull out your resume. Look at everything that you have done to get to this point in your career. Look at all the great things that you have done and are doing externally from your job as well. Maybe you coach a team. Maybe you are involved in your professional association. Maybe you're heading up a committee, right? Maybe you are going out to the schools and you are working with students to encourage them to get in the field. Look at all the different great things that you are doing and be confident in who you are and in your success. Next slide, please. I would be remiss if I didn't mention volunteering. And the important thing to know about volunteering is this is a great way not only to give back to the community, but also to build your presence and gain visibility, as well as boosting your leadership skills. There are a lot of interesting leadership skills that we gain from volunteering, things like communication, things like team leading, right? Lots of wonderful things. And there are many, many opportunities to volunteer and engage. Corporate volunteering is on the rise, and it's becoming much more tied to engagement within our organizations. So lots of great things you can do, lots of great ways that you can engage in your community, and that also helps boost your career. Next slide, please. So to sum everything up, really, let's think about what you want to say. We're going to start with those soft skills. We're going to start with communication. We're going to start with listening, right? This is going to help us create that foundation. On that foundation, then we're going to build our pitch. And from there, you're going to naturally have yourself in the position of being a desirable collaborator and a desirable teammate and a desirable person to move up in the ranks. At the same time, we also want to think about the word yes. Yes, your leaders want to say yes. You just need to give them a reason. And how do we do that? We do that with purposeful plans. We do that with your expansive knowledge base, and also your presence, your professional presence helps you move ahead. If you follow these steps, you're opening the door to robust communication and collaboration. You can feel confident as you move ahead. Next slide, please. Okay, Rhoda, I'm going to turn it back over to you for our final question.
Okay. And again, just to remind people that they can drop a question via email or through any of the platforms. The email link is on there. One of the things I want to touch on falls into that imposter syndrome area, I think. I think everybody in the room has at some point in their career said, boy, that person who's presenting is so confident. I could never be that confident. And that person may be just as nervous as you are, but they've sort of practiced and put themselves out there and worked on that. And I sometimes think it's like a coach would tell you you're going to run these drills, or if you're a musician, you're going to practice your scales, because it's all muscle memory. It's all about teaching yourself to do that, even if you may not feel comfortable about it up front. I mean, how much of it is that? It's just sort of, you have to sort of overcome yourself.
Excellent question. So yes, what we're talking about here is building your confidence, your external confidence, so that you come across as poised, you come across as comfortable in the room, right? There are many ways that you can work on this. If you are not comfortable speaking in front of a group, practice. Start at home, practice in front of the mirror, literally looking at yourself as you are speaking. Then you'll see how you come across. You'll feel that there's another person that you are practicing with, and you can see how your body language shows up. Next step would be speaking in front of a group, maybe having a sit down with a colleague or two, or if you're not comfortable doing that in the workplace, with friends and family, and giving a small presentation on a particular topic. The next level of that would be to look at an organization, maybe Toastmasters. Toastmasters is a great way for people who want to build up their speaking skills and their confidence to be able to do that in a safe space with other people who are doing it as well. So it's a very supportive environment, and you write a speech per se, and then you actually get up and present it, and you're given feedback and support along the way. Lots of things that you can do to do this. I agree with you. Practice, practice, practice. We all need to continue practicing and growing. I think it's natural to be nervous when you're in front of a group. You just need to know that if you know what you're doing, as far as your confidence, your material, your skill sets, you can do this. And the first few times, it's not going to be comfortable. But as you continue to put yourself into more of these situations, you will become more comfortable. You can also engage in theater. Theater is a great way to get yourself up on stage and get used to being in front of an audience. It also helps you develop poise and timing. So there's lots of different ways that you can address this.
I know that there was a workshop I went to at one point in which they said, if you don't feel comfortable just speaking out loud or something, and it's just like, oh, this is so strange. This is just like, they said, get on the telephone and call yourself. Leave a message to yourself to sort of practice what you're going to say. And I would imagine, so many people are working on Zoom right now.
Mm-hmm.
You could practice recording yourself, so you get used to that little green light up there, and you can see how you look, how you present on screen,
mm-hmm.
Which is going to seem really, really weird. I think everybody has that perception when they first hear themselves or see themselves on a screen.
Agreed. When you see yourself on screen or when you hear yourself, if you've been recorded and you're listening to it, your voice doesn't always sound like you think it will. You don't always look like you think you do when you're on screen. I love your suggestion of doing that recording. That's the idea of also talking in front of the mirror. It's letting yourself get comfortable with who you are and with your outward appearance. Let's face it, we all have things about our appearance that we might want to change. That's okay. As we said before, remember the humanity factor. We are all human. You are speaking to people. And, people are not there to judge you. People are there to listen to what you have to say and to enter into conversations with you. So absolutely, I love the idea of recording and practicing, and just keep at it and get comfortable. You can write out a script. A lot of people do that. They'll write out an entire script of not just talk points, but they'll write out a full script of every word that they want to say and practice that. And if that's what helps you to start this process, I say go for it. It's going to take some time, but the more comfortable you get with your script, eventually you'll toss your script out and you'll just feel comfortable with your material.
Okay, here's a question that came in via LinkedIn. And again, you can use those other platforms to send questions.
Excellent.
One of the big fears in presenting is getting questions that you don't know how to answer. So do you have any recommendations you can do to handle those situations with confidence, or at least not be put off from them, not to be scared off of presenting?
Sure. Those are always the toughest questions. And a natural tendency is to do sort of the deer in the headlights. But in reality, remember what we said. It's okay to say, I don't know. If you don't have an answer, that's okay. You know what? You can say, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you at this moment, but when we're finished with the meeting, I'll go back and I'll pull those numbers and I will have them to you by noon. Right? So you're taking the fact that you've been asked a question that you can't respond to, And then you're showing what type of an action you are going to take so that you have a solution and that you can provide that answer. Most people will be comfortable with that. Now, if you were supposed to come into the room with the answers and you don't have them, then maybe you weren't as prepared as you should have been. And that's a great lesson to learn. Next time, make sure to look 360 at everything you need to be bringing in to that meeting with you so that you've covered all the bases. I'm a big troubleshooter, and I tend to look at a situation from every possible angle and try and figure out what kinds of questions I might be asked or what might happen in this conversation that I would need to respond to. Preparation is a good thing. Some people over prepare, some people under prepare. You need to find that happy medium for yourself where you can be comfortable answering questions. And again, sometimes you need to pivot also. So if you're in the middle of a conversation and a question comes in at you from left field, it's okay to pivot. Just make sure you come back to your original material and you don't stay off on that tangent.
Okay. On the subject of feedback, I know that, one of the worst things I can see is when I ask for feedback and what I get is looks good, which really doesn't help. So how can you give good feedback? I mean, what can you do to make certain that you're not just filling space, but you're actually providing good feedback?
I love this question because so many times that's exactly what happens, right? You ask for feedback and someone says, it was fine. Fine. Fine is a 4-letter word. What does that mean? So a great thing to do when you are asked to give feedback or when you are providing feedback to someone is, first of all, to be kind. Remember that this person is human. They have just put themselves out there for whatever it was. Maybe it was a presentation. And start with the positive. Let them know something great that they did. Then talk about some areas where they might be able to grow, and then follow up and end on a positive note so that you're sandwiching in the challenging things with some positives, because we always want to make sure that somebody doesn't walk away from feedback thinking, geez, I really blew that. Right, left, and center, she didn't have anything good to say. Feedback can be positive. Feedback can help you to overcome some of your challenges. So make sure to include both.
Okay. And then, just one more thing, because we are kind of running out of time here.
Okay.
How can you improve your listening skills? I mean, if that's the big thing that people are looking for, how do you improve that so that you can add that to the conversation?
Right. Excellent question. So the first thing to do is to avoid distractions. Okay. When you're listening to someone, if you have your phone in front of you and you're texting on your phone, that's a distraction. Put everything aside. Focus on the person. Look at the person who's talking to you. Look right into their eyes. And, if there's a screen between you, like there is between us, look right into the camera on the screen. You can see the person on your screen, so you can see their gestures and their body language, but let them know that you are interested in what they have to say. Also, speaking of that body language, observe yourself. And again, make sure that you are not doing this. Maybe you happen to be one of those people who, when you're thinking, you get real serious and very introspective. That's fine. And you can be thinking that. But to someone from the outside, they're not sure what that means. And when we are not sure what something means, where do we go? We go to the negative side. And so we interpret that as, gosh, this is not a good thing. I'm in trouble, right? And that may, again, not be the case. So think about your body language. Keep it open. Keep it engaging. Keep it smiling. Open arms, palms up. Right? Nod your head as someone's talking. Let them know that you get what they're saying. Acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. I see, right? It's okay to put a little interjection in there as well. And just really pay attention. And remember what we said before. Check your emotions at the door so that you can fully take in that message. When you hear everything that they have to say. And also, one more thing I'd like to add, which is try not to decide in advance what you think they're going to say. When you sit down with someone for a conversation, it's very easy when you hear the first few words of a sentence in your head to say, oh, I know where she's going with this. In actuality, she may not be going over here. She may be going straight down a path. So we want to listen to the entire message, hear everything that has to be said, then decide how we feel about it and how we want to respond.
Okay, and then I think one last thing I could throw out there is to go back to the confidence thing. What about using? So you're in a meeting, you're not necessarily presenting, but you do want to make yourself heard. If you're not feeling confident, could you take this as an opportunity to raise the profile of your team and say, hey, here's some other things other people are doing. So perhaps you're not confident saying, here's this thing I'm doing, but you can say, hey, Tammy in my team has got this great thing going on. Just so you know that this is going to be coming forward. We're going to be able to present something in a couple of weeks, something like that. But to be able to praise other members of your team and sort of build up that unity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You should always be promoting other people on your team. It's confidence is internal, right? It's how you feel about yourself. But at the same time, when we're at the table, showing confidence is being strong enough and comfortable enough to promote some of those other members of your team. If you think about leaders, a strong leader promotes and acknowledges and recognizes her people, right? It's not about her and what she did. It's about her people and the successes that they've achieved. So absolutely promote your people. Let everybody know the great things that are happening. And if you have someone that you want to spotlight, like your example of Tammy, that's a great idea. It's a great way to give Tammy a little visibility, as well as your team as a whole. And also at the same time, gives you something to talk about that, as you said, is not about you. People are very uncomfortable talking about themselves, and not all people, but most people. And that's okay, because that's not what we're doing here. It's that inner confidence. When someone walks into a room and they are confident, they don't have to tell you that. You know it. I'm a proponent of show them, don't necessarily tell them. So in terms of confidence, inner confidence, we want to show our confidence. When you know who you are and you know what your direction is and what your focus and what your goals are, you bring that with you to the conversation. And it's understood that you know what you're doing. And it's understood that you feel good about your team. And when you speak about your team, that just adds an extra layer of, wow, she is really supportive of her team. She is an excellent leader, and she really believes in Tammy and the work that her team are doing. That's a reflection on you as a leader. So absolutely feel comfortable promoting your team. That's, appropriately. That's not to say you run around shouting out nonstop, this is what my team is doing, but absolutely promote your team. And this is how you and your team will be able to get ahead in the workplace.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to have to let you go because we do have some other presentations coming up. But thanks so much for your time, Karen. Everyone who attended today's workshop, appreciate you taking part. If you have additional questions, you can see her website is on there, and you can contact her directly through the website, kabercom.com.
Two M's. Oh. 2 M's, KaberCom with 2 M's.
2 M's. But we hope you join us today at 10:30 Eastern, so in about 15 minutes, for a presentation from Kate Hale and Jen Lockman of Intertech. We're going to be talking about nurturing a diverse workplace. At noon, we have a special interactive Ask the HR Manager session with Chief Human Resource Officer at Crane Communications, Nikki Kallick. Great opportunity to get in some questions there that maybe you haven't had a chance to ask your own HR people. At 2 o'clock Eastern, Colleen Felstow of Imlay City Molded Products will be offering tips and tales from a veteran leader. And then at 3:30 Eastern, we'll be honoring our class of 2020 Women Breaking the Mold in a ceremony and panel discussion. So thanks for joining us so far today. I hope we're going to see you the rest of the day, and we'll check in with you again soon. Thanks a lot.